Kia ora, and welcome to the BERL podcast. I'm your host, Conrad Harron. Today, we're celebrating a very special episode of the BERL podcast. It's the 65th birthday episode, and I'm joined by our chief economist and director, Hilmari Schulze. Hilmari, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Kia ora, Conrad, and kia ora to all our listeners. I am Hilmari Schulze, and I am the Chief Economist and Director at BERL, and I have been the Director and Chief Economist for the last 18 months.
And it's been a challenging, good long time. Yeah. So I guess I really want to start this conversation with kind of looking at the past, kind of first, and then going to the present and then future. And so I'd like you to give our listeners a bit of an insight into kind of your origin story of coming from South Africa to New Zealand and kind of how that all happened, and then kind of getting into BERL and what that means.
Yes, well, Conrad, I moved to New Zealand in 2006, and it actually happened by chance. I met Heke Parata, which at that stage was at Muni Kōkiri, and they were looking for someone who had experience in Indigenous economic development, and I was approached to come and work for Te Muni Kōkiri. I moved to New Zealand in January of 2006, landed on a very, very welcoming, windy Wellington night, and started on the 9th of January at Te Muni Kōkiri. So through my work there, I was supposed to stay, I think, in New Zealand for about 2 years, and it has now, this past January, been 17 years. Absolutely fell in love with New Zealand and stayed. Before moving to New Zealand, I worked for the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. I focused on Indigenous economic development. So I was responsible for 47 African countries. So I had the privilege of working and traveling through the entire Africa and focusing on economic development and private sector investment. And of course, before that, I worked in South Africa at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, which is the bilateral bank supporting Southern Africa development. And I started my career working for the railway services in South Africa, doing logistics, and figured out at that stage that I hated it.
Fair enough. So I guess, when you came to New Zealand, what after the TPK role, what attracted you to BERL?
I think what attracted me to BERL was the work that BERL was doing, and also the values of BERL and what they focused on. I worked while I was at MB, or before MB, it was actually Department of Labour. I did a couple of projects with BERL, and I absolutely liked the style, the independence, and the structure that BERL brought, as well as the mana and credibility of the brand.
There is a lot of mana behind there.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to kind of pull on that thread a bit of the mana and how that was built and kind of the importance of that. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, as we say, BERL has been around for 65 years, and we claim to be the oldest private economic consultancy firm in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And as any SME or history, if you look at how we started, so we started in 1957 by 3 very headstrong, feisty men, Hugh Walls, Norman Macbeth, and Brian Philpott. They did not agree with the government's forecast, and they produced what was at that stage called the BERL forecast in 1957. And they stated that, it's going to be a tough budget likely next year. And then, of course, in 1958, we had the infamous black budget. So it started off, and it builded and evolved like any small SME. So over the years, I think blossomed into a fully fledged economic consultancy firm.
Yeah, it certainly is, for sure. And so I guess, given that now that we are the fully fledged consultancy firm, really blossomed over the last few years, kind of moving into the present. So over the last few years, we've kind of lost Ganesh and Cal, kind of the three directors, or two of the three directors, including yourself. So what was that like, kind of moving on from those two and the legacy they took over and also built upon, and kind of switching focus, but also holding on to that? What's your experience been like with that?
Well, Conrad, I think it was all of the emotions mixed together. It was seriously daunting, scary, challenging, exciting, all at the same time. So Cal, which has been with BERL for 60 years, retired a couple of years ago, and he brought with him such a wealth of experience and knowledge. But also building on that, making sure that, you know, we keep on building on that knowledge base, but also having that historical content. And then Ganesh, 2 years ago, also decided to move on and do something a bit different, which had a profound impact on BERL. But I think it's also an SME like BERL is, and I think that's part of the legacy, isn't built on only one person. It is building on the incredible staff that we have and the incredible work that they have produced. As you know, we get a lot of requests, people phoning up and asking for the BERL report. And we always had a giggle about that, because when we started going electronically, I think in the 1990s, up to now, we have done over 6,500 projects. So of that, you know, we have thousands and thousands of the BERL reports. So I do think kudos to Ganesh and Cal and, you know, Macbeth and Philpott and everyone that went before them, is that they have built longevity into the brand, so that it can survive. It doesn't matter who is actually hitting the waka.
Right. Yeah, that's super important for a SME in New Zealand, especially if you are going to trade as a going concern. That's always the assumption. So I guess you know, on that kind of, how do you as a SME work towards that kind of increasing profitability? You know, kind of switch focus from one strategy to another, kind of switch to more profitability focus.
It's very hard, you know, if I look at the history, and we have been looking at the history of BERL over the last 65 years, you know, we had our ups and downs, and, you know, we've managed to pull ourselves from the brink of bankruptcy quite a few times. But I do think it's being conscious of your market and how the market changes, and making sure that you do change with the market, but also following some good principles around accounting, around strategic management, and I think the most important is HR. In an SME like us, our most important asset is actually the people working at BERL, and listening to the people working here and making sure that you attract people with similar values, but also highly skilled, that can actually contribute not only to the profitability of BERL, but also to our pool of knowledge.
Understandable. So I guess you know, going back to kind of the whole theory of, you know, BERL's been around 65 years. You know, we've faced a lot of challenges as BERL, as the company, and also New Zealand's faced a lot of challenges. Kind of, what role has BERL served kind of in that time, and, you know, how's that changed recently, or has it changed?
I think, Conrad, it's ever evolving and changing,
Yeah.
and you have to be, you know, we do talk about this being, you know, lean and adaptable, which is, it's not always easy. You know,
Yeah.
we've done it a certain way. It's worked for many, many years. So it is hard to change. But I think part of this is what we've seen in the last few years. We employ younger people with different views, and people from all over the world. You know, we have people working here that's from, you know, India and Brazil and China, and just bringing all those different perspectives helps and support us to really look at the world slightly differently. Because we have had some, you know, some major wins. I remember that Cal telling me that it was about 40 years when FOMA, the Federation of Māori Authorities, was set up, and Cal played a crucial role in setting that up. So, you know, as you know, we have been very strong supporters of the Māori economy over the last 40 years. And I think just playing a role in supporting central government, local government, iwi entities to make some good policy decisions.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, the Cal helping setting up FOMA was something when I started at BERL and discovered that I was blown away. It's absolutely awesome, and it was cool that kind of we were in the same building at one stage. So I guess if we want to talk a bit more about that and kind of work we've done to support the Māori economy and support FOMA, because from my perspective, you know, I came here when it was 2016. I didn't really know what BERL was until I applied for the job. But then I started looking at our previous reports and looking at what we'd done for local iwi. One of my first projects was for a smaller iwi down in the South Island, just, you know, learning to understand what challenges they were facing, kind of what they needed from us in terms of like their social profile, economic profile, and why that's important. So I guess, yeah, could we explore a bit more about how we've kind of assisted, or how we continue to assist iwi and kind of that our role in New Zealand in that respect?
Yes, I do think, and it's, you know, being economists, it's very hard for us to also be good marketers. We suck at that. And as you know, the majority of our work is not in the public domain, and it's never meant to be in the public domain. So we have supported a significant amount of Māori entities, Māori iwi ahowhenua trust collectives throughout the years. But I think our most visible part is the Te Ohanga Māori reports that we produced. So we have looked at quantifying the Māori economy, because as you know, once you have a magic number, it is easier to hang your hat on it and to make some policy decisions. So in 2006, we were brave enough to do the first version of the Māori economy, and Ganesh put a stake in the ground at that stage and said, this is it. If you do not like it, come and talk to us. And on that, we built, and we've done a second and a third one. So in 2020, we launched the Te Ohanga Māori 2018 report, which the Reserve Bank graciously supported us in publishing. And I do think that it goes back to making good informed policy decisions. And that has to be based on some good evidence. And, you know, we've become better at this. And with every round that we do update the Te Ohanga Māori report, we get more evidence, we get better information. And over time, I do think it will become a really, really good source for looking at the Māori economy.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I think you know, I really resonate with that. That our role is really produce the evidence, and then people can come at us if they don't like it. We always produce these stakes in the ground. My work was the same when I did the work on the cost of sexual violence. Just it's a stake in the ground, and you know, if you want to talk about the assumptions, come to me. It's fine. But
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, and I agree with you on that, Conrad, because it's important that in all our reports we publish our methodology, and we have it with Te Ohanga Māori, we had it peer reviewed internationally as well. And people do criticise it because it still is a methodology, it's not a fact. But if we have it out in the public domain and people do scrutinise it, we improve on it every single time. So every time we have a better quality product.
Yeah, the stake in the ground just gets better and better.
Yes.
And continues to support policy going forward. Yeah, it's important. So I guess, talking about policy going forward, what do you think is kind of on the cards for New Zealand in the next 10 to 20 years? Not policy specifically, because that's not our area, but economically, what challenges do you think we're going to face?
As you know, I have this aim or focus about making sure that we all understand that about every 10 years we have an economic shock. COVID, before that we had the global financial crisis, before that we had the Asia financial crisis, and before that the oil shock. So they all space out to about 10 years. And I do think we as a country are getting better at sheltering against an economic shock every time it comes round. So we do look at our economy and improving and making sure that we can do better once the next, which we know by around 2030, the next economic shock will come round. But I think it's a very opportune time for us as a country to look at our economy and what we would like to achieve in the next 10 years. And I do think that we have to have a strong focus on innovation, moving towards just transition, and what that will mean in a global context. Because we still are a very, very small player. And we have to be conscious of what policy decisions are made in the rest of the world, because it does impact on us significantly. But what I do like is our shift towards being a more active participant in the Pacific economy and in the Pacific side. Because, this is our home, this is our region, and I do like the shift that we are more shifting towards the Pacific side than moving away more from the European side to our more stronger trading partners and also our neighbours.
Good point. It's a good point. And so doing so, again, you need evidence to make those decisions. That's what we provide.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to pull a bit on some of those threads. You talked a bit about sort of every shock we have, we get better at sheltering from that, or sheltering people from the effects of that. I wanted to get some of your thoughts on what helps in that regard. So I guess from our perspective, which is kind of a special perspective, where we're the ones who build the evidence bases and provide those to policymakers. What do you think helps in that regard?
I think two things which have helped between the last two economic shocks is the diversification of our economy into a shift towards the knowledge economy. Not fast enough, but a step in the right direction. And part of that, as you know, Conrad, is once you get an SME and it gets to on that cusp of being a superstar, it gets sold, not to a New Zealander, but to a consortium in Canada or Australia or the US, and it's lost. So I do think that we are getting slightly better at holding on to our superstars. But I think going forward in the knowledge economy is to push even further in terms of innovation and knowledge and support of SMEs to be able to grow and become bigger entities and actually stay in the country.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Certainly talking to people in my circle, it's commonly share those views. You get to a certain size and you either move your company to Australia or you just sell it. It's just
it's hard, and as you know, it's commonly said that we are an economy of mortgages with a bit of things added on, and we truly is. So it is creating some opportunities for people to have alternative investment opportunities and to attract some startup funding and finances and venture capital into our market.
Yeah, that would be really, really awesome. Let's do that.
Because who doesn't want to live in New Zealand?
Yeah, well, today we've got a beautiful sunny day and barely any wind. It's weird. Yeah, so I guess kind of shifting from that. What are your thoughts on specifically the Māori economy for the next 10 to 20 years? Ash? What do you think are the challenges, and And how should we respond to those?
As the Maori economy is growing much faster than the Aotearoa New Zealand economy, it is going to become an even greater part of our success. And as you know, within Māori entities, they do not have a 3 or 5 year plan. Like Tumanaka Wereta from Tuarapaki said to me, he says, you guys have a 5-year strategic plan. I said, I have an infinite plan. So I do, and that stuck with me through the years. It is looking at it so differently. And if you look at investment and investment opportunities, Māori collectives invest in the rohe and their regions and in New Zealand. And that is going to be an important part of our future. But apart from the assets, it's also Māori people. So Māori people are the biggest contributor to the Māori economy. So the next generation workforce is going to be Māori. So they're going to play an increasingly important role in the next generation and making sure that we have a workforce that are educated and that have high quality jobs will have to be targeted specifically at Māori and Pacifica.
Right. Yeah, that's an important point. So I guess, for anyone who wants to see this kind of, if you dig into the statistics on Stats NZ and look at the age breakdown by ethnicity, the Māori ethnicity breakdown is very, very heavily weighted towards the younger side, and everyone else is very heavily weighted towards the older side. So, fast forward that 10, 20 years, and you're going to have a very, very large Māori workforce, kind of relatively smaller everyone else.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So, fast forwarding 10 to 20 years, say to 2040, which is actually only 18 years away now. It's getting closer. What does BERL look like in 2040?
Well, hopefully I'll be on pension then, but I do hope that in 2040, BERL will still be around, and then we would hopefully be able to have our 85th birthday to celebrate 85 years in business, which I think will be a tremendous experience for everyone. Because, SMEs, if you look at births and deaths, we are an anomaly. So hopefully the next generation of leaders in BERL will be agile enough to be able to provide opportunities for the next generation after them to participate in this very exciting area, to influence policy decision making, regional economic development, as well as economic development for the entire country.
Right. Yeah, we'll certainly be facing a lot of different challenges then, but honestly, I think we will be facing a lot of the same challenges as well. And so I think going to still have to keep providing similar evidence as we do now to support similar policies to solve similar challenges. But I agree, a lot will change.
Yeah, I do. And as you know, with data and with metadata and access to more data and data, it is, what do you do with it? How do you turn that into knowledge that you can actually make some intelligent decisions on? So I do think within the next 20 years, and especially for BERL, that will also be part of our challenge, is, not to go too deep into the data, but actually what do we do with it? And how do we ensure that the data is credible and robust to be able to turn into knowledge for making, informed decisions.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Because we sort of have lived through the hype bubble of big data. Hopefully we don't get too much feedback for that, for me saying that. I think we have, but I guess big data is not going to get any smaller. But I guess the real challenge for the data industry as a whole is we have a lot of ways to collect data. We have a lot more stuff to collect data about. But then, as you said, how do you turn that into knowledge? And I think the first step of that is actually turning data into statistics. Which always involves some sort of subjectivity around which data points you're going to include, which ones will go away, what definitions you want to use, and that's kind of so that should be a lot more of our role. Kind of as it is now, we kind of take statistics as they are, or we do create some of our own, or develop some of our own using raw data. That's going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, we can really be, I think, on the forefront of innovation around that. We are a country of 5 million people, so collecting data and having credible data should be a lot easier. And, you know, turning that into, you know, some new models and innovative ways of looking at it should actually come from us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they could have a situation where we develop the statistics we need in terms of definitions, and then somehow buy the raw data and have it made into statistics in a way that preserves privacy, but we can still have the kind of custom statistics we want. That'd be really neat. I'm kind of thinking a bit of like the IDI and maybe extending that sort of infrastructure to other things, hopefully.
Yep.
So I guess, have you got any other sort of parting thoughts for the audience that you'd like to pass on before we turn this off?
We've been going, we are moving at the end of November as an office to a new building. We have been in the same building for 28 years. So it is time to, you know, move into the 21st century. And as part of that, our team has been going through our lovely 65 years of filing. And to be able not to move with or pay for hundreds of thousands of files, but to actually have that all uploaded electronically. And that in itself was quite a journey to see the projects that we have worked on in the last 65 years, but also the people who have worked here and the clients that we have had. And, you know, and I think it's also, for me, it's honoring the visionaries and the leaders that shaped us, not only who worked here, but also who were clients. And I'm very humbled and privileged and excited about, you know, BERL going forward. And I know that we will have many more wonderful people that work here and many more wonderful clients that support us on this journey.
Likewise, share those sentiments. Looking forward to it. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, Hilmari. It's been a real pleasure having this interview. I'll leave that to the end of the interview, and to the audience, thank you for tuning in, and happy 65th birthday, BERL. Time for retirement. Well, time for at least a gold card, at the very least, right?
At the very least, a BERL card, for a gold card for BERL.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, Conrad. Ka kite.
Thank you. Ka kite.